After 2 months of hemming and hawing and big promises and pledges the House Republicans are finally showing their true colors, the Republicans were given a $2 billion budget surplus on a silver platter, and now they want to give it all back to corporate special interests with a silver spoon. They're wasting an opportunity to expand economic opportunity for all Minnesotans in order to cater to the priorities of their corporate bankers. I want to have cut tax cuts to corporate special interests that don't need it. If you just look at House File 1, which was down on our closure, you can see where they're headed. Even though they don't want to tell you, I'm not surprised they don't want to tell you right now what their plans are. Because really what it is about catering to their corporate special interest friends. And Paul has also promised everything to everybody, which they clearly can't deliver now. And so their only course is to balance the books, is to return to the same old shifts and gimmicks that got us into trouble in 2011. We've been down this path before, and here we go again. With a $2 billion surplus, first of all, we can do better for Minnesota kids, especially our students at both ends of the spectrum. Those preschool kids who need a head start and college students who are seeking an affordable degree. We should be able to $2 billion surplus to reduce student debt, to freeze tuition, and to invest in our earliest leaders. Instead, the Republicans are prioritizing cutting taxes, again, for the corporate special interest friends. The biggest losers in this budget are our kids. Less than 1% increase for education in a budget with a $2 billion surplus, and $775 million less than Governor Nate has proposed to invest in kids, in our college students. That's the wrong priorities. With a $2 billion surplus, it's also outrageous that the Republicans would cut funding for Minnesota seniors and disabled and the most vulnerable. 2 years ago, we had a $625 million deficit. And the House Democrats did propose a $150 million cut to the Health and Human Services budget. And the Republicans, if you recall, were apoplectic. Her doubt was outraged that we would consider that. But there was no excuse for doing that. And yet, now with a $2 billion surplus, Republicans want to cut almost over $8 billion. Cutting taxes for millionaires and welfare by cutting services for almost vulnerable should offend the sensibilities of every Minnesotan, and it will, because that's the wrong priorities, and frankly, it's something we experience. For our Minnesotans, vulnerable Minnesotans under the bus in order to serve the low tax rates to corporate special interests is just the wrong approach for our state. And finally, with a $2 billion surplus, we shouldn't need shifts and gimmicks and funding money to balance our budget. But it appears that's where we are as well. You heard the speaker today calling the budgeting methodologies that we used for decades in Minnesota fictitious. We've been down this path before. The only way they can give those surplus back to serve their party interests, to serve King County, and to serve corporate special interests, is again to do the shifts and gimmicks and jeopardize the state's fiscal future. And what we saw and what we know about that is that in 2011, that was the recipe for shutdown. The budget targets that the Republicans are putting out today is a recipe for heading the state to a shutdown any time of a $2 billion budget surplus. That's fair, and that's why this give the deficit back budget is the wrong direction for Minnesota. They're writing general fund dollars for transportation, and it's interesting in this budget, they're not accounting for the transportation bill that they announced yesterday. If you look at the numbers that they have invested and borrowed and taken on the general fund. And this $600 million in the transportation budget for this bill is not accounted for anywhere in the spreadsheets that you've been given today. So already we're seeing kind of this show game budgeting that the Republicans have become known for. And again, it's a recipe for not getting anything done and for shutting our government down. Now, I'd like to just spend a few minutes going through the real numbers here because I don't think the Republicans really show them because they show the political factors. But the spreadsheets we pointed out, if you look at the very last column, that spreadsheet, which has the House targets. This is from nonpartisan research compared to the 16-17 forecast, which is how we do our budgeting and how the spreadsheets are rolled up. And you'll see here $156 million more for education, $53 million more for college. About $775 million less than the government proposed. That's a 1% increase. And as Representative Erin said, it won't even allow them to do the tuition fees that they've been promising over and over again, let alone deal with student debt and other issues. And certainly we're going to allow them to put any money into the K-12 system if they're going to do one other thing for early childhood. I also see here $1.15 million cut to health and human services, a 7% cut to the health and human services budget, which again largely goes to people in nursing homes, people seeking long-term care with disabled, the very people of government said will be their number one priority. I can't do that with a $1.15 billion budget cut. $24 million cut to the environment. And here's another one that I think is significant. If you look at the jobs budget, cutting $20 million, so spending less money on creating jobs in Minnesota, economic development for Minnesota. What's in that budget? Things like investment in broadband, things like investment in workforce housing, things like growing Minnesota economic development. And things again, Republicans said were going to be their top priorities, and yet they're cutting that budget by over $20 million. If you look at the real numbers, you'll see that the Republican budget path simply doesn't add up. And I think Minnesota should be very concerned about that. It's easy for us to be focused on our sectors. So what that means is more cuts to people in the state at a time to huge budget surpluses. Again, only because they feel the need to have corporate tax cuts to their backers. And it means that we are headed in the next 2 months to a situation where we're going to be disagreeing about what the numbers actually mean. We're going to be talking about budgets that look very different from each other. I mean, the governor's budget, I was saying the same thing with the Republican budget. It's a recipe for shutdown. Minnesota should be very concerned about this, and the fact that the Republicans continue to be willing to actually look at the true numbers, the true cost of what it means to provide services in Minnesota, the true rate of budget in this state. And it's disappointing, and it's a little bit scary, quite frankly. We're not even going to waste the opportunity that has been given us with this recovery economy and the $2 billion budget deficit, and yet the Republicans are clearly going to squander that opportunity. It's very opportunity. I just have to look at the fact. For the Republicans to come out today and compare our budget to family budgets after spending 5 hours on the floor last night, essentially slashing the budgets of tens and tens of thousands of citizens by cutting the minimum wage for some of the hardest workers in the state. I find it incredibly distasteful. It just shows the true colors of the value that they have a political rhetoric over the reality of Minnesota's lives. I don't know if you guys think this is I think this is one of our priorities. Remember 2 years ago, we had this Leader Thissen over $600 million deficit. We owned our schools back $800 million. And we made it the education session. And last 2 years, we put in over $600 million of huge, important investments in education, including all the other kindergarten, and over $250 million of investments in higher education, so we could freeze tuition. That's over $800 million in times of a deficit, and we still have hours back to schools this year with almost a $2 billion surplus. Given to the Republicans by a growing economy, hard-working Minnesotans, and good governance, they are spending an increase of over 1% for education. $150 million for Eastern 12, $53 million for higher education. Over $800 million to $200 million. Those are the priorities very clear. We're going to put students and kids in the future first. We're going to put tax breaks to corporate special interests first. And that is a huge priority difference. And one more point is, look at the $1.1 billion cut to health and human services that our Representative Dilworth talked about eliminating Minnesota Care. Minnesota Care helps disproportionately more Minnesota families. The top 25 counties per capita with people on home care is from Minnesota. And what's really funny is that we're not a big time of deficits. The Republicans' plan for working families is to cut services. And now when we're in a surplus, their plan is to cut services to working families. No wonder working families can never get ahead of a Republican majority because they're up against special interest and tax breaks for others for their own benefits.
And so the priorities are very, very clear. You have priorities of the governor and the Democrats as for the future, and then you have the Republicans, which is to make sure that we roll over special funds.
I was saying in 2011, we're going to shut down. The reason we're going to shut down is because the Republicans inflated the numbers, the Republicans held up numbers, and the Republicans prioritized special interests over working people. And that's what they're doing right here again.
The Republicans are comparing their numbers to actual spending last meeting. You're comparing your budget to expected gross spending for current meeting. What do you think your comparison is a fair one then comparing it to the actual spending last 3 years?
Because that's how we always do budgets. Secondly, it's because it actually builds in reality that there's growth in the economy. So the growth in the budgets is not just because we're spending more per person. We actually have more people in Minnesota. We actually have a growing economy. That's all good stuff, but it also means that the cost of providing those services go up. So those are and this is how a family would budget. A family doesn't budget themselves by saying costs are not going to go up. They budget and anticipate that there's actually going to be increases in the cost of living. That's the reality of life. Republicans like to ignore that reality, but it is the reality of life.
So this is budget. Your assessment of the plan that we can see a lot of things to calculate how to build up the medical assistance.
We can't even come close to $1 billion in cracking down on eligibility medical assistance. Do we need to always continue to look at that, make sure that that's correct? Absolutely. But we're never going to come to make $1 billion in cuts to health and human services without growing people. I mean, they may claim it's as growth in the budget. This is the other response to the earlier question. But to the person that the diabetic that was getting diabetic strips, to the person with mental health needs that was getting services and now don't get those services, those are real cuts in their lives. And so there's absolutely no, this fiction that we can invest our way out of $1 billion in that budget, 7% of the entire budget. I don't think that that's close to accurate. The other thing that I would want to kind of on the health and human services side is that the proposal to eliminate Minnesota Care and move that into Minnesota, that's not even general fund money. So that doesn't even show up in this budget spreadsheet. That's health and access fund money. So you can't. So that number we're now talking about right now is a $1.5 billion cut if they're going to follow through with that plan.
I think what we saw this meeting in 2011, what we saw was fictitious numbers and holes in their budget, right? The Republicans, when they had to make big cuts because there was a deficit, were unable to really produce those cuts in health and human services. Not in a way that was meaningful. They just had fictitious numbers in their budget because even they don't really want to make the cuts. That they had to make them decide a deficit. Now we have a surplus and they're choosing to make cuts, significant cuts in health and human services. And I think when I go to the committee this afternoon, we're going to be dispensing terms because there will be so many people that didn't really believe this was going to happen. Over and over again, as I really need to see a cut into this budget time, they said we have such a significant surplus. Why would we see cuts to people with disabilities? Why would we see cuts to people who get their health care through Minnesota Care? Why would we see cuts to people who are relying on services to live their lives independently out of the state of Minnesota? And we will see today that even in a time of surplus, the priority for the Republicans is not to assure independence and health, but instead to give corporate givebacks to their supporters and take that next step to Minnesota. What specifically are you talking about?
Well, the first one is House Bill 1, which is the premier bill, which is $700 million of special interest tax cuts to corporations and businesses.
What are the shifts in givings? Could you be more specific about?
I think we'll have to watch out for it. I know that in the transportation budget, they're shifting lots of money around. There's not a lot of more money in that budget. And again, a lot of money that I can tell is actually accounted for in their spreadsheet. So they're going to be spending more on the general fund of transportation that actually shows up on the spreadsheet. I get concerned that they're going to do a shift on the Health and Human Services budget to use the Health Care Access Fund instead of for what it's used for other purposes, just to dump that into the general fund to help fund the tax cuts. So those would be two examples. And remember from previous Representative Murphy talked about this, I think it was $750 million that they paid up in the last Health and Human Services budget, and it's far over $700 million at least that you have the tax, the money, $120 million that have been collected additional taxes by auditing people that actually ended up, maybe getting a couple million dollars. So they have a history of doing this. And I think it's just very important for people to stand up and ask for these shifts in needs, which will be what they do.